I'm making this video today about mental health awareness. I struggle with mental health issues, just like a lot of other people do. And I want to put it out there that, nobody is ever alone when it comes to mental health problems. There is always resources in the community. There are ways to get help. And, there are people with the same condition, the same diagnosis that, you may find easier to talk to, because it is hard to talk to somebody who doesn't struggle with mental health, somebody who doesn't understand anxiety or things like that. It's not as simple as just, getting over it. And I am putting myself out there to, talk about my mental health issues. I struggle with quite a few diagnoses. The first and foremost being I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And for those of you who do not know what that is, complex post-traumatic stress disorder is caused by long-term exposure to stressful situations. In my case, it was child abuse. I went through many different kinds of child abuse early on in my life. So I have always struggled with fears of abandonment, which is part of my diagnosis. When I was 3.5, I actually got adopted, but my biological family, they struggled with a lot of substance abuse issues, and due to those substance abuse issues, they, neglected what their daughter needed. They abused me in ways that no child should ever have to go through. Sorry. I just can't imagine how someone abuses a child that can't defend themselves and can't help themselves. But because of what I went through as a child, I will struggle with my post-traumatic stress disorder for the rest of my life. Also, as a result of the abuse that I did sustain in their care, I have borderline personality disorder as well. And that is one of the hardest things that I struggle with on a daily basis. There's good days, and then there's not so good days. There are days where I'm completely fine and, it's not a thought on my mind, but then there are days where I'm depressed. I don't want to leave my room. I don't want to leave my bed. I don't want to leave my home. I just want to lay in bed and isolate myself. And that's okay, because that's part of my diagnosis. And, when those days happen, it's getting out of your bed. It's getting out of your house. It's going for a walk, no matter how much you don't feel like doing it. It's, spending time with some friends, even though all you want to do is be alone. Mental health is hard. And those are just two of the things that I struggle with on a day-to-day basis. I was diagnosed a year ago with 4 mental health issues. I was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, borderline personality disorder, anorexia, and anxiety. And my anorexia I am in recovery from that now. But that was a result of my post-traumatic stress disorder. Part of the characteristics of the complex post-traumatic stress disorder is anger turned inward. You take things out on yourself, such as self-harm, eating disorders, alcoholism, substance abuse, things like that. So that was a direct issue that I struggled with for 10 years because of that. And even to be diagnosed with that last year, I didn't even feel that was an appropriate diagnosis because I didn't think that I was still struggling with it. I had thought that I was fine. So, I mean, mental health does come out of nowhere, especially for myself. I never know when I wake up the next day, is it going to be a good day? Is it going to be a bad day? Am I going to be depressed? Am I going to be anxious? Am I going to be happy? Am I going to be okay? And, I have gotten help for my mental health. But one of the hardest things about my borderline personality disorder is I had a nurse who, sat me down and she told me, she said, it's a part of your condition is you will be suicidal for the rest of your life. You won't live a normal life. And while that may be true, what is a normal? What is a normal life? Because I don't know anyone out there that's just living a normal fairy tale life. Mental health affects so many different people. And I think that, the Bell Let's Talk Day is, it promotes awareness, but awareness should be promoted every day and not just on days where, a company says we should. I think we should all be supportive to those who struggle with daily mental health problems, and I'm not one to go into all the details of my diagnoses because when I was diagnosed at first I was really ashamed. I didn't want people to look at me like I was broken, like I was different. Like I didn't want people thinking, well, she's fragile. I have to walk on eggshells with her because I don't know how she's gonna react. I don't know, how she's feeling, and that's one of the worst things you can do is walk on eggshells with someone who has mental health problems. Just be there, just support them, talk to them, make sure they're okay, check up on them, because they already feel alone as it is, and you don't need to make them feel more alone than they already are. Yeah, this was not an easy video to film. I definitely put myself out there, but I know I'm not alone, and I know there's many other people out there that, are looking for information on their diagnoses, and the first thing that I did when I was diagnosed is I turned to YouTube, and I looked for people with borderline personality disorder. I watched videos, and there's not a lot out there, and even with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, it's not something that's really known about, so there was not a lot of information out there that was accessible for me, and I think if more people talked about it, the less people would feel alone. And the more people would feel like they have hope. And that's a really big part of it, is always having hope. And, you know, when you do have the bad days, it's remembering that, you know, the good days will come. It's not going to be bad days every day forever. You know, there will be those fleeting moments where a smile comes across your face and all of a sudden you're happy. And that's great. But it's also those moments where you sit there and you go, you know, I accomplished something today. Because no matter how depressed I was, no matter how anxious I was, no matter how isolated I wanted to make myself be, I spent time with friends. I left my bed. Those tiny little things, those are positive. And if you keep making positive adjustments, it doesn't have to be all the time, but just baby steps, it might help. But see what your community has out there, because I know personally for me, I didn't even know half the resources that were available for me. And I think that people need to understand it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay. But what's not okay is when you've lost all hope. And the only reason I say that's not okay is because there's always somebody to talk to. There's always somebody that will listen. So go out and find those people. Try and get help. But don't isolate yourself. Don't make yourself feel more alone. Don't make yourself feel more alienated than you already do, because you aren't alone. Thanks, guys.